What is up? Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. We'll give it a couple minutes while everybody still starts kind of joining in. I am Rob Sellers, publisher of Cougar Digest. This is the Cougar Digest podcast. We are on episode 30 tonight, big 30. After discussion this week, evidently, I think I've been off by about 10 episodes. So we are on episode 30. Kind of looking back this today, joined obviously by Gatlin and Blake, Mr. Kevin Digital Dude. He had another commitment come up tonight, so he's not going to be here this week, but he'll be here in spirit because he got to set it up before he couldn't be here. But yeah, we'll take a look back at the Cincinnati game. Disappointing game, I know, for a lot of people, a lot of fans. Kind of didn't really expect that going up there. We'll touch a little bit on recruiting, some other this and that stuff. And then, of course, we'll talk about Iowa State this Saturday coming into TDECU Stadium, the 18th ranked Iowa State Cyclones. So it doesn't get any easier in the schedule when you get to this week. So obviously, we'll start off with Cincinnati. That was a game that, it seemed to get out of hand early, and then it just got worse as it went. The turnover machine was working. There was the same struggles offensively that have been there. Lack of shots down the field, again, I feel like was an issue. I know that's something Coach Fritz has addressed, wants to try to improve upon, and that's one of those. There's a lot of moving parts there. So for it to come together, for it to work, for it to come into play and all that, it is what it is. Couple tough fumbles for Sean Sanford. Phenomenal back, absolutely RB1, and he's RB1 right now because of the holdback that he is. And we talk about this a lot of times week to week. His pass pro is hands down probably the best on the team, and that's what's got him up there. He's not a bad running back either. He might be the quickest guy in short, little short windows. He might be the quickest to get through holes of the group, but again, his pass pro sets him apart, and that's why he's been elevated to running back one for the season. So hopefully that's something they can work on. That's one of those deals, being out at practice, that's something they work on every single practice. There's always some form of drill that goes on with ball protection and make sure you have it. Knowing him, I know he's very stubborn and very dead set on trying to be perfect on everything he does. I would not expect that to be a continued thing. And if it is, then that's going to play into the depth chart there at the running back. So I have faith that I think he can correct that. It was, just not only just stinks to lose a couple fumbles, but I believe both of them were in Cincinnati's territory. Cincinnati's territory. And so it becomes one of those costly ones instead of not, you lose a fumble. It's, that's kind of the game of football. You hope not to have turnovers, but to lose two in the territory of Cincinnati when you're getting shut out, that one stings a little bit and sticks with you. So it's one of those deals. The biggest surprise to me, I think, for Cincinnati was the defense. And I don't know if they just kind of lost their spirit because they saw early on that the offense wasn't going to do much to help or had not, delivered much early on. But that's not what we've seen from the defense all year. It's been that's been the solid part. We talked week to week and including last week that, this was one of those, this is a formidable defense in the Big 12. So, I'm sure they've talked a lot about it, watched a ton of tape, tried to correct things that were wrong, and I think that they'll, try to come out this week and have a better showing on the field and prove that last week was more of a fluke than the previous 3 weeks. And I know the competition level changed a bit through all of that, but nonetheless, they were the solid of the first 3 games. So tough road loss. It is what it is. Like Coach Fritz has been preaching, you got to turn the page and move on. He's got that one day, be happy or be sad about it and then turn the page. And so you hope that's what they were able to do this week, continue to try to move forward and piece together, a little bit better whole performance this week. So they've got their work cut out for them, but we'll see how it plays out. Gatlin, what were your thoughts coming out? I know you've been busy this week. What were your thoughts, though, coming out of the Cincinnati loss?
Yeah, I think obviously there's been a lot of talk this week about the offense, rightfully so. I think the defense kind of came back down to earth a little bit. It was a matter of time, right? Like I still think the defense is good. Are they a top 15 defense? No, probably not. But they're an opportunistic defense. It's a very aggressive defense. They like to blitz a lot. And Cincinnati had a great quarterback who sat there, and frankly, I'm a little shocked. Like, I watched all three of their first games, and when Sorsby was under pressure, he had made some mistakes, and I thought U of H might be able to force him into doing the same kind of thing, and he did not. He was very poised. He made very accurate, down the field in coverage. I mean, it was remarkable. So, that mixed with the run game, which we knew was going to be dominant. Corey Kiner, just ran all over everybody. Look, it happens. It wasn't their day. That doesn't concern me, to be honest with you. They're Cincy's a good football team, especially offensively. For as far as our offense goes, Rob, we talked about this in the offseason. You asked me on our draft spectacular, Gatlin, if you had a chance to dig into the OC, what do you think? And I said, well, Rob, he likes to run the football. And if we don't improve, it's going to be a long season. And you said, uh-oh. Look, I don't know why everybody's surprised. This is what Kevin Barbay does. I don't think it is the play calling that concerns me, in the sense that I'm hearing things out of both sides of people's mouths online. Like, on the one hand, we want to take more shots downfield. Okay, well, we're calling plays that have deep routes, but we don't have wide receivers who are winning their matchups. We don't have a quarterback who can drive the ball downfield. And we don't have an offensive line who can pass protect. So that's not a recipe for an offense that should be trying to drive the ball downfield. And that's what's kind of concerning, is I feel like the thing that I felt good about going into the Cincinnati game was, all right, we can play a ball control offense here. We can run the ball, keep it to, third and manageable, make a couple third down conversions, and we can keep this a low-scoring game, and we might be able to get out of here with a win. Even though we only threw the ball down the field, once or twice, I went and charted it, and I think we had 10 or 15 plays, with 1 to 3 routes, and several of those being deep concepts. That's to me what is most confusing right now, is it feels like there's some tension between what, and this is just me assuming at this point, what I assume Kevin Barbay wants to do offensively, and what maybe Willie Fritz or other folks are asking him to do. And I think it's leading to kind of a master of none situation where, we're not fully committing to being a ball control offense. What are we asking Donovan to be a gunslinger, or are we going to ask him to be a game manager? Right? Because I don't think it's for him to ask him to play the middle there. And, on one hand, we want him to drive the ball downfield, but also we don't want to live with the turnover, the ball that he threw on the side. That wasn't his fault.
Right. It absolutely wasn't.
Yeah. Everyone's kind of talked about that. Obviously that one was on Jonah Wilson. He curved that route. He needed to attack vertical, do his break. But that stuff is happening all over the field. So if we're not ready to execute, let's run the ball and let Kevin Barbay do what he does, because the play action stuff has worked. When you go back and look at the OU game, it was probably the best game throwing the football that we've had, and it was because a lot of our success throwing the ball was off of play action, right? So those are just my rambling thoughts, but to kind of sum it all up, I feel like we're kind of in a no man's land offensively. I feel like everyone's kind of talked about this at some point. We just need to find an identity and commit to something. We know this isn't going to be the season where we make a run at the Big 12 championship, but I still think we can win a couple games if we just find something that we're willing to commit to.
That makes sense. It really does. I agree with you. First of all, on the Cincy's quarterback, I was blown away by how accurate he was, and he was throwing dimes in that game, and it was everything possibly that could go right for Cincinnati did. And so it's one of those, I don't know if I put it on our chat or what, but this team is snake bit last game. Anything that possibly could go wrong at a bad time did. And the fact they came up against Cincinnati and like you said, probably the sharpest game they've had of the year. And so, especially their quarterback. So, I mean, I don't know what to say. You hope that things look different this week and they, kind of prove that that was a bit of an anomaly. I know the offense, unfortunately, was not as much of an anomaly, but even they've been able to move the ball a little bit better. And like I said, the turnovers were costly in bad situations, and that probably affected the scoreboard a little bit. They've still got to work, and too, this is something I talked about, and I think we all talked about a little bit coming out of camp was the kicking game. That's one of those things that's been it's been a bit of a sore spot through the first few games. So that's again, can they find who's going to be? I know they've gone through Martin, they've gone through Kim, they've got a couple more walk-ons on their young guys as well. It's one of those deals you got to find out who can get you the best job done. And I mean, when they're having so many struggles scoring points, I think that it's even worse when you can't get the 3 points. You end up losing the three, not even getting the seven either. It just makes it worse. So I agree. Like I said, a ton of what you said. They got to figure out what they want to do. I know there's been discussion of, a lot of people on the board obviously following all the threads and all that, talking about, should there be a quarterback change? Should there not? This and that. You know what I mean? Like, I feel they've all got so much different. They really do. Like, obviously, Donovan's got the physical stature that you would love to have. And he's probably got a bigger, definitely, I think he's got a bigger arm, better passer than what Zion Chris is. But Chris is quicker, too. He's quick as opposed, I mean, I'm sure he's fast as well, but he's quick. He has that ability when, the pocket's collapsing to make a couple dudes miss and get upfield and get some yardage. But, yeah, it's one of those deals. I know how many people have heard if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have one. I know we've heard that over the years. And so it is what it is. Like you said, like you were pointing out, Gatlin, you gotta fit it to what you have the best you can. If you're not going to be able to accomplish some things, then focus on the things you can do successfully and try to get every ounce of it you can out of it. You got good options for special teams touchdowns each and every game, and you've got opportunities, I think, for an opportunistic defense to create some turnovers and even some points. So you're not asking the offense to be number one offense in the Big 12 or the country or whatever. You just need them to be able to put some points up and let the defense and special teams do what they need to do. So, Blake, I know you were a little bit off. You were driving some during the game and all that. I'm sure you were listening, but what were your three thoughts you came back with after the fact when you saw the score, maybe read the box score and all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna make just a few different points here. I think first and foremost, I kind of said coming into the season and throughout the season that I thought the defense was already rebuilt. It was just a matter of getting guys experience and getting them, on field playing time. And it's shocking to say after a 34-point shutout loss, but I still think that's the case. It almost felt like because that you saw really early on in the game since he hit a deep strike touchdown to go up two scores, and it was almost like when you watch Rocky IV and Drago gets cut. It's like this defense hasn't given up anything all year. They literally have not played a game that was not dominant this season,
Yeah.
maybe short of UNLV, but I would still argue they were only really liable for maybe two of those scores. But regardless, I mean, it was a team that you've seen. They've been very good all year. It's a group that has not given up anything, and they just got rattled early. That's what it looked like, that's kind of the thing that comes along with the experience. I still believe in all of the guys as far as an X's and O's standpoint goes. I mean, obviously there's holes as there are with any unit, but from just what Houston has to do and what they have to do to be successful, the defense has been checking those boxes all year. Cincinnati's the first time they haven't done that. I think that was really just because that initial, it's kind of like everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. That's really what it felt like. They came into this game feeling really good. They got punched in the mouth early and they just couldn't recover. All season they haven't really given up deep strike touchdowns. And I said it last week. I thought I said it all over the place. I think Brendan Sorsby is a future NFL quarterback. I truly believe that. And I tweeted out, I'll give credit where credit is due. Brendan Sorsby is the first quarterback who's been able to push the ball down the field in chunks against Houston's defense. So, while obviously 34 points is not an encouraging number, I think it almost does speak more to Cincinnati's offense than it does to Houston's defense. Cincinnati's offense has been good all year. Statistically, they were top 15. A lot of people thought that was a charade. I was honestly one of them. Now I'm not as convinced. I really think that offense is legit, and I think you're going to see it in Big 12 play. The other thing, I keep getting asked this question, and I get it because I'm kind of recruiting is my main thing. I really don't think any amount of losses is going to heavily impact this recruiting class. You might see a few guys drop here and there, but I think staffs kind of know what they have preseason, and I'm not that I'm saying that they just accepted defeat at all. Obviously, Fritz has mentioned he wants to win every single game, but they know that this is not like we're making the pitch that we're going to go win the Big 12, so watch us do that. That they're pitching a whole lot like this is a substantive hire. We put the roots in the ground, and you're going to see it slowly get better. And I would argue, obviously last week was very discouraging, but going from week 1 to UNLV to week 2 to Oklahoma, you see that development, you see that progression. And so that's why, I'm not, I'll spoil it a little bit. I'm not going to pick Houston this week. I think Iowa State's defense is incredible. That being said, I'm not going to sit here and be like, don't even come to the game because you know what's going to happen. We kind of people said that after the UNLV game. Then you turn around and you face Oklahoma, about the biggest Goliath you're gonna face on the schedule, maybe short of Utah, and you take them to the wire.
Yep.
Obviously there's a lot of room for improvement, but I maintain my stance. I think this defense is more or less rebuilt. I think they've gotten the guys they want. And a lot of these guys come back next year. Like Carlos Allen, for example, comes back next year. That guy has been incredible for Houston this year. So as far as you see the memes on Twitter of people already writing Fritz off, and I feel like I should tweet this out after every single loss. It feels like you have to, but it's like if you're really ready to write off a guy like Willie Fritz this early, you do not have a career in sports administration. You just don't. Stick to EA College Football 25 because you're not going to be this in real life.
Yeah.
The only thing, and you can quote me on this in a decade, 2 decades, whatever. The only thing that'll stop the Houston rebuild with Willie Fritz is if Houston gets too impatient. I don't think any amount of losses change that. I think the timeline is the same timeline, and I think you don't need to panic if you're a Houston fan.
Yeah, a couple things you said there, Blake. So first, on your point about Willie Fritz, I said this for Houston fans, man. I feel like we're becoming the very thing that we used to make fun of with Texas A&M, for example. Like, God, we used to laugh at them every time they fired a coach and wrote a big buyout check. You sit there and say, "Yeah, for sure, it's the coach." Yep, Jimbo won a national championship at Florida State, but he's the problem.
He forgot to
looking in the mirror, Aggie fans, right? But you know what? At least they show up to the games. They got 80,000 in the stands, and they got boosters who are willing to write those checks.
Yep.
We've got people on Twitter who won't go to the game and think, 4 games in, Willie Fritz should be fired. We may be worse, and it's scary because I don't remember who I heard this from, but it was some coach, on an interview. He said, the advice I give to young coaches is never take a job where the expectations are higher than the resources. And man, I don't know how we got here, but for some reason we got really high expectations and we don't have really big resources, guys. So, that's a little concerning to me. But Blake, on your point about the defense being rebuilt, I think if you look at one of the big issues, right, that everyone wants to talk about is penalties. Okay. I think we've definitely had more penalties on offense and, to some degree special teams than we have defense. I think a big reason for that is at every single level, defensive line, linebacker, and secondary, there is a 2-lane Willie Fritz guy in that room. Keith Cooper, Kendra Gant, and Kentrell Webb. That is when Fritz says Cougs don't beat the Cougs, play through the whistle. Right now, those are just slogans. You don't put it on a shirt and it happens overnight. It didn't happen overnight at Tulane, and it's not going to happen overnight here. Okay, the defense is further along because you got guys who know what that looks like and what it takes to get there. That is accelerating that process for those rooms. On the offense, if you had brought in Kai Horton, Chris Brazel, and one of their offensive linemen, you may have the same situation on the offense. But right now, it's going to take time for these guys to learn what winning looks like. You're gonna have to get tired of losing, and there's gonna be a lot of people who still probably have to transfer out, and it's gonna take some time to build. But to your point, Blake, I think we have the right people. The question is, will Houston be patient enough to let them go 2-10 the year before they win the Cotton Bowl?
True, very true. And to touch on another one of Blake's points, not only should you not pursue, sports administration if you're ready to give up on Willie Fritz, you've obviously never watched what he's done in his other jobs and why he was the one that they hired, knowing that this was going to be a big rebuild. So I think he'll be fine. Those people that are calling for Willie Fritz, they're not living in a valid world anyway at the moment. Yeah, it's not going to happen anyway, unless unless one of those random Twitter people with no picture and no name on their profile has like a lot of money to force that situation. I don't think it's going to happen.
One of those guys is secretly Tillman's burner account,
Truman Fertitta or whatever that, yeah, unless that's him.
But two more quick points. So to kind of circle back, one last thing I had on kind of the offensive play calling. Again, I want to be clear. I'm not defending it and saying this is an offensive genius at work here. Okay, what I am saying is, I'm sorry, who's the offensive coordinator at Miami right now? Shannon Dawson. Shannon Dawson calling plays with a similar offense, but had Clayton Tune, Tank Dell, and Patrick Paul, involved. Horrible play caller. You send him to Miami. Now he looks like a genius. Oh, that's what happens when you give him Cam Ward and get him out of this situation. Dana Holgorsen, one of the brightest offensive minds in the country, in the history of football. I think Donovan Smith still finished 8th in the Big 12 in passing yards last year. You can fact check me on that, but it wasn't, as remarkable as people like to remember. And now, Kevin Barbay, who's been successful as an offensive coordinator, like, again, I think at some point you have to understand, yes, could we be doing some different things? Sure. But we don't have the people to execute any of that stuff anyways. Cincinnati, man, they last year committed to running the football. I think they averaged like 8 yards a carry. They don't have better recruits than us, but they've committed to a system and an offensive ideology, and they've recruited guys who fit that system. Right now, you just look at the battle at left tackle, right? You've got David Ndukwe and Dakota White. They still kind of flip-flop. You see Dakota White in there a little bit every game, and it's because he's a much better run blocker than Ndukwe is, but he can't pass protect to save his life. And, you kind of have that at every spot where, outside of obviously, I think maybe Tank and Pancake, can do a little bit of both. But, those other 3 spots, there's some real things that you need to figure out as far as, again, just philosophically who you're going to be and start recruiting those guys moving forward.
Yeah, that's fair. Am I coming through okay audio-wise there, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. It was sounding a little choppy on my end. So moving past the Cincinnati game, I know recruiting, we've touched on a couple things this week. Blake, you had a story out yesterday, I believe it was, on the Brian Rudder receiver that's a Tulsa commit. Why don't you throw a few thoughts in on just what you got from him, talking to him, and where you see it at the moment?
Yeah, he's obviously, like you mentioned, committed to Tulsa. He fits this mold of what Fritz's staff likes. Historically, they really heavily value senior tape on wide receivers and running backs. That's what got them Tyjae Spears. That's what got Houston Kobe Young. That's what almost got them Justin Jefferson. They were one of, I think 3 or 4 offers for Justin Jefferson coming out of high school because of his senior tape. So far through, I believe it's 4 games, Jaquise Martin has put up just ridiculous numbers, averaging over 150 yards a game. This is their first 4-0 start, and I believe 3 years. They're on pace for their best season in program history at this point. And he's been pretty much the catalyst of all of that. So, talking to him, he's still obviously he's committed to Tulsa, but he told me he's not opposed to official visits anywhere else. Right now, I can't confirm any plans for him to visit. I know Houston talked about bringing him in for the Iowa State game as like an in-game unofficial visit, but he's going to go elsewhere this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him in Houston, though. Right now, I believe he's a mid 3-star, I want to say, on 247. Power 4 offers are Nebraska and Texas Tech. Like I said, committed to Tulsa. The wide receiver coach at Tulsa right now is Ryan Switzer. He played at North Carolina a few years back, played for a couple different NFL teams. I know that I believe he got drafted to the Steelers, but he's the wide receiver coach there. I would go out on a limb to say that's like 90% of the reason Jaquise is committed there, because of that relationship. But, you mentioned that, Coach Bell is always in contact with him. Coach Sherman is always in contact with him. So you never know. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. He's in the 2025 class. The only current wideout committed in the 2025 class is Alan Cormier. So you could go out on a limb again and say there's a good chance they bring in somebody else. I don't know how many more wideouts they're going to go get in this class, but I think Martin is on the short list.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. And to kind of revert back for a second, too, since we're on recruiting, I don't know if you saw, there was a story up today from Mike Roach talking about regional guys in this area that, as we get to flip season or whatever, guys you need to keep a track of. And like you and I talked the other day about Blake, Jacob Bradford was on there in terms of just guys you need to keep an eye on. That, LSU's obviously been hot on his trail for a while. And I believe it said he was even going to go potentially this weekend to the Georgia-Alabama game. So he's one of those guys. It's going to be, because he's a Louisiana guy. I've said it over the years. It's really tough to get a kid with a Louisiana State offer out of Louisiana. It's one of those things that doesn't happen. It does happen, obviously, but it's not an easy deal. These kids grow up. You know how it is over there with LSU. They grow up, just eat, breathe, sleep LSU football. So we'll see how that one plays out. That's one of the ones like that. Like I said, Blake had brought up, as guys will just continue to try to keep a pulse on down the stretch. Like you talked about, Blake, the staff knows what they're selling. Like you said, they didn't tell you to come out and watch us win the Big 12. These guys are the reason they want to bring them in, is to be a part of the rebuild and be able to get back to that level as quickly as possible. So one of those deals we'll keep an eye on as it proceeds. And Blake, you're still going to try to make it out to Port Arthur. That'll be a fun drive for you. You're going to make it out to Port Arthur tomorrow night and see Keelan Roberts, the 26 wide receiver commit. Huge kid. Obviously, we both had a chance to put eyes on him in the offseason, and just massive. It'll be interesting to see as he fills out just how good he can be. Anything you're looking forward to? Anybody else? We'll probably take a look and see who else is over there, the younger guys as well, before you get there. But, yeah, that'll be a good one for you, and I'm sure you'll have some thoughts or whatever, some video on Twitter, X over the weekend while you're out there, and we'll probably talk about it next week for the podcast. So I know Gatlin, you brought up too, as far as another subject, which is a big subject in the college sports world right now. The UNLV quarterback opted after 3 games to redshirt, debating points of view from either side, getting their story out through sources. He says, he had a verbal agreement for $100,000, and he didn't get nearly that. Some people say he didn't get any of it. And then so it's one of those things. It's been a hot topic.
Now we're losing your audio. Your snap crackle popping.
Talk about that.
Yep, no worries. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously it's been a hotly debated topic. I think personally, this is one of those stories that could really propel a lot of legislation changes quicker than maybe was expected. Obviously, this is one of those deals where, the news that I've heard, at least coming out this afternoon, right, was that, maybe he had a verbal offer from the wide receivers coach, but the collective never knew anything about that. And so, that brings up the question of, well, why is the collective involved in the first place? NIL has never been about marketing. It's pay for play. So, I think this is one of those stories that could bring NIL in-house maybe faster than folks are probably anticipating.
Yeah, I will say, as far as Houston's interest in it, and the Big 12's interest in it, I'm not going to name names. That'd be really unprofessional. But schools you see marketing NIL, just keep an eye on those recruiting classes. There's like you kind of alluded to, it's the wild, wild west right now, and a lot of people like this. If you think this issue is isolated to UNLV, you're already wrong because Bear Alexander from USC just entered the portal over something similar. But it's something that's going to it's not a one-time thing. This is going to be a trend. This is going to be something that happens a lot going forward, and that's why I think it's really important for recruits to educate themselves on what NIL actually is, what the offers they're getting actually are, because a lot of what's being sold out right now is not really as it seems. And all I will say is among schools who are making that pitch of NIL, just keep track of their recruiting class, and you'll kind of look back on it like that. I think it was like the 2021 Texas A&M class that you go look at it on 247 now, and everybody is at anywhere other than Texas A&M. So again, I'm not going to name names, but the schools you've noticed really marketing their NIL stuff, just keep an eye on their recruits and see where they are in a few years.
Yeah,
That's fair.
You've heard, I think Willie, even Kelvin, kind of talk about like their view of NIL is, we're not going out and using it to land kids. We need to be competitive enough so that once the kids are here, we're able to keep them here, and I think we all know some situations. I mean, like that I think is the most important thing for this, for a school like Houston is, to your point, Blake, obviously, I think the teams who are highly competitive in NIL have their own challenges. But for us who are never going to be highly competitive, I do think it is important in this Wild West, moment here to at least be able to hold on to these guys once they get in the door. Because, I mean, obviously we know there's a lot of tampering going on. Part of this whole Matthew Sloka thing was, they said, obviously don't know how much truth there is to this, but that he had been contacted as early as February by UNLV, right? Long before he entered the portal. So this is going to get messier before it gets cleaner for sure.
True. That makes sense. A little better on the audio at the moment?
Yep.
All right. Let's move on to Iowa State. If I cut out again, y'all feel free to jump in while I try to sort it out. Iowa State coming in this weekend, 18th ranked Cyclones. Very good team. We talked about them early on. Very good team defensively. They've got some really good offensive weapons. Their quarterback, Rocco Beck, has done a really good job for them. Been very formidable. I think that they have got a decent O-line in terms of what I've seen as far as experience on their offensive line, the job they've done, keeping him clean. That obviously, as we found out watching Houston, that plays a big role. And I think they similar to how Houston's trying to beef up their tight end room, they've got a decent tight end room. And so that's one of the weapons they use a lot in their passing game. It's one of those games coming in. It's kind of similar, like was brought up earlier when UNLV beat Houston so soundly, and then Houston was going up to Oklahoma. Everyone was like, "This is going to be a slaughter." I'm with Blake. I did a preview story with the Iowa State site a couple of days ago, answering some questions with them, and yeah, I did not pick Houston to win. That was their final question. Was like Gatlin, like we like to talk about previously, is what's got to happen this week for Houston to wake up and be a winner Sunday morning? What's got to happen? And so, I didn't take the sarcastic route out. I actually, talked about a few things that would have to go better this week. Defense obviously would have to prove the last week was not a fluke. The offense would have to, show some better consistency and avoid the turnovers and the costly stuff that happened to them last week. And, I didn't pick Houston to win the game. I know that might ruffle a couple feathers. I just don't see what I needed to see from them consistency-wise on both sides of the ball to pick them to beat Iowa State. Now, could it happen? Absolutely. We talk about that all the time. And, they went into Oklahoma, and they came out of that game looking better than a lot of people expected them to look. So never say never, of course. It's college football. That's why everyone loves it so much. But as for being a betting man, I would not put my money on that to happen. But I don't think anything would make me happier than to be proved wrong and get a good performance and a little bit more positivity and excitement on the board. Obviously, that's the direct correlation to what we do. We see the message boards all day and jump in there with conversations and stuff, and it's always funner after a win, obviously. So we'll see how it plays out. I know you've been busy this week. I know you're normally our deep dive guy as far as the podcast goes, and we got Jimmy on the site. His story will be up first thing in the morning. Just some thoughts on Iowa State from your end on what you think about what needs to go well for Houston, what they need and avoid happening against Iowa State.
Yeah, so I did, in full transparency, didn't get a chance to watch any film on Iowa State like I would have liked to most weeks, but digging into the numbers a little bit, and just kind of what I know about Iowa State, something to note. Obviously, very different than Cincinnati, where last week you have Corey Kiner, who is kind of the bell cow, hogs all of the touches. They have their lead back in Abu Sama, but it's kind of a three-headed monster. They split those carries. Abu gets the most volume, but Jalen Jackson and Carson Hansen both will get their fair share of touches, and they all kind of average about 4.5 yards per carry. I would say it doesn't run the ball super effectively. Decent enough, but obviously Rocco Becht and that passing attack is going to be something to deal with. To be honest with you, I'm not, I don't want to say I'm not concerned about that piece of it, but again, I think for Houston, a team who wants to throw the ball, and stretch the field and doesn't really look to get involved in the run game early like that, it doesn't scare me as much. I think we have a good back end and we can play aggressive, as we talked about. I think you can do some things to get in that backfield, get a couple sacks and create some pressure. And, if you can, I think the big thing for Houston here is you got to be plus in the turnover territory. That is, when you look at that Oklahoma State game, like that's the name of the game here. And so when you have a turnover on the first drive, like that, I think is what put the defense in such a bad spot last week. Moving into this week, can you take care of the ball offensively? Iowa State obviously has a great defense. Can you control it on offense, and can you force Iowa State into, one turnover? I think that's what you need to look for.
That's fair. It is. Blake, I don't know how much time you've had. You do a pretty good job of keeping track of everybody in the Big 12 as a whole. What have you seen, and what are some things that worry you, and maybe some opportunities you see for Houston to capitalize? Anything?
Yeah, Iowa State was kind of my Big 12 sleeper coming into this year. I think short of Oklahoma, this is the best defense Houston's going to face. I'm aware Utah's on the schedule, and I'm aware that Kansas State's on the schedule. I think Iowa State's defense is better. Right now, they're only giving up 9.7 points per game. In this day and age of college football, I do think in general defense is catching up to offense a little bit in college football, but even still, 9.7 points per game, and it's that they haven't played the hardest schedule in the world, but I mean, you got a Power 4 opponent. I know it's Iowa, but still, I mean, you could play 3 high school teams. It's tough to allow 9.7 points per game on air. So this is another game where I kind of get the same vibe going into it that I did against Oklahoma, where it's this is a game where Houston doesn't necessarily need to win on the scoreboard to win. The kind of the theme of a rebuilding season is establishing culture. You're not in the NFL where you tank for draft picks and losses are a good thing. No matter what, you want to win. That being said, the big thing for Willie Fritz is like we mentioned earlier, having the Tulane guys in the room. You've seen those be the best. It's establishing that sort of culture. So I don't believe Houston can win. You watching this, you don't believe Houston can win. The important thing is that Houston believes Houston can win. A quick anecdote: whenever Houston went up to Oklahoma, my if you don't know, my family they're all from Oklahoma. They're all big OU fans. My dad is about the biggest OU fan out of all of them. They were sitting third row at midfield when Houston came up to play Oklahoma, and he said before the game, number 5, talking about Keith Cooper Jr., was looking at the crowd saying, "Not today." not today. And he got chills watching it. And he looked at my mom and said, we're in trouble today. Because that guy believed that Houston could win the game. Nobody in America believed it, but he did. I think it's important that Houston comes into the game thinking, not today. They might beat us every other day, but they're not going to beat us today. And if they can do that and they can keep this close, the spread is 16 points right now. I want to say against Oklahoma, it was like 21. If you can just keep this game close, you can establish that culture sort of. I'll say it's a moral victory, even those don't. I know those don't exist. If you can just keep this one close and just make Iowa State sweat, I think this is one that you can walk away feeling pretty good about. This season the bowl hopes are already it's on life support right now. So again, the name of the game is establishing Willie Fritz's brand of football, Fritzball as they call it on Twitter. And I think again you don't have to win you don't have to upset every single team. You don't have to make a bowl game to do that. You just have to establish that no matter what. And Willie Fritz mentioned this. He's really good at compartmentalizing week to week. Every week is a season. And you saw that again. I mentioned I was so shocked about the turnaround against Oklahoma because momentum-wise, it's so hard to come back from 27-7 against a Group of 5 team in week 1 to going into what at the time was a top 15 team and nearly beating them. It's the same thing here. You go against Cincinnati, who I think they're pretty underrated, and I felt that the whole season. And many people have them at 15 in the Big 12. I really haven't seen them above 10 in the Big 12. Going from that, losing 34-0 to now you're playing the best defense in the Big 12, in my opinion. That's tough. That's going to be this is where Willie Fritz. They say pressure makes diamonds. The pressure's on right now. As far as keeping this locker room together, I have no doubt that he's going to do it, and that's why I do think Houston's going to cover the spread. But I've got to go with my brain over my heart. I think Iowa State's probably going to win this game, but I think Houston can still win without necessarily winning on the scoreboard.
Yeah, and one other thing to note here, again, just as we're kind of talking through, like Rob, the question of if we wake up on Sunday and Houston won, like what's something to think about that maybe plays a role here? Iowa State, they're a little bit more multiple on defense, but a lot of their base is still the same kind of 3-3-5 odd stack look that we saw against Cincinnati. Okay. But a difference here, they don't have a Dante Corleone in the middle. They're good up front, but if you look at their leading tacklers, they like to collapse down. So the DBs set the edge and play run support, and the linebackers fill in the middle. Okay, and that's how they play. I think there's a tremendous opportunity if the tight ends can play a big role here, getting some blocks in space, setting the edge. You could see the running backs have a big day here. Ran for over 100 yards, I think 130 something against Cincinnati. This could be one of those games where Houston runs for 200 plus yards. They lock it down and go super ball control, throw the ball 15 times, and Donovan Smith goes 13 for 15. And, the final score is 20-14, right?
Yeah.
I think that is in Houston's ideal world. I think that's how this plays out.
Yeah, that's very true. Obviously, if Houston could get that run game going, I mean, if they could ever establish that very well, that plays very well into what they want to do on both sides of the football in terms of keeping the defense from being on the field constantly, as well as having those extended drives, those clock-eating drives that you end up getting points out of in the end. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. If it's one of those deals, like you said, if I wake up Sunday and Houston's won, what happened to get them there? And so that's a very good point. You have to see how it plays out. I don't know. It's going to be one of those games like like a lot of other people. I think everyone just kind of wants to at least see that last week was more of a fluke. You can cut down the turnovers. You can, the defense can return to kind of what they've been and all that good stuff. And like you said, if you can establish a run against a team like Cincinnati, then that definitely plays into your favor by keeping their offense off the field some and being able to keep your defense rested because they're going to need what they can bring on that end of it. So, and like I said, I feel like in every game, Houston's a threat to have a special teams touchdown on one or the other. I think Mackie Muse is due any point. He could probably bust one off. Mays has been phenomenal back there in the kickoff return game. I mean, there are players there, and I know it's a long haul. When you try to look and point at the good stuff, like things that could go really right, Houston has some playmakers, but it's going to have to take some things playing out the right way in other areas that's not just a runner, like the blocking, like you mentioned, the tight end's doing a great job of still setting that edge. That's a big thing that plays into it. That's just something they've struggled with at times early on. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of pretty much where things are at. Wait on Saturday. It's a 6:00 kick. Blake will be in the stands this week, so y'all don't maul him if you see him. He's gonna have his folks with him, so y'all be nice.
That is something I should bring up. My since I enrolled in Houston, with my dad in attendance, Houston is 1-0. With my dad not in attendance, they are 3-11.
There you go.
We'll be there on Saturday. If anybody would like to pay for his flights down every Saturday, we will not.
Somebody get me my bookie on the phone. I've got to speak finally. I'm ready. But yeah, I thought this was good. I know Blake, you sent a message once we got going that it showed up on Spaces this week. We got all that end of it working out. The numbers look pretty good. It seems like they've jumped some, so that's good. I feel like we're maybe reaching a few more people. And so, for those that's caught us before, make sure you go to you may be watching us on Spaces. Subscribe over on X. Go to the YouTube channel. Subscribe, like any of that stuff you can possibly do. Of course, come by the site. Check out our conversations that we always have going on over there, our content. I feel like we probably do the best job in terms of whole coverage between team.
Rob, we lost your audio again, but I think we're about wrapped up here, guys. So thanks for watching. As Rob said, be sure to like and subscribe, share this with friends, and we'll see you next week.